Welcome to the podcast, Distinct People, Distinct Time, where we have a conversation about congregational life in the 21st century. I'm today's host, Jacob Benier, and with me is Pastor Jeff Long. Well, today we're continuing our series on elders in the local church. And so last time we examined why a church should have elders, particularly a plurality of elders. And today we're continuing the conversation, but we're asking the question, what do elders do? That's never been a question you've received, I'm sure.
Oh, no, never, never. And take it a little bit further. What do you mean? What do elders do?
What do they do, whether it's collectively or individually? What do they actually do to serve the church?
Okay. So illustration you've heard me use hundreds of times as staff, and it's true of elders. So there are individual things that we do, and then there's the collective things that we do. And those individual things need to work in the collective. So in other words, we're not a bunch of golfers. We're not a golf team where we're all out here trying to hit our best shot. We're not competing with each other to see who can get the best score. We're a football team. We all have positions. We all have responsibilities, but we have a shared reason for doing things. So I've got to understand that what I'm doing individually is for the shared effort of what we're all doing. So we're going to talk about several areas of what elders do. Some people are going to excel more, you could say, be more clearly gifted in those areas, but it's something we all are sharing, we're all responsible for in how we do it.
Sure. So maybe this isn't the exact job description of each elder or the expectations full on, but each elder has a hand in this, and it's something y'all do together. So when the elders are meeting, it's not just theological pontification. You're not just throwing out ideas, but you're actually doing things both in the week and then when you meet together.
Yeah.
So that first one, the first area that we're going to discuss is shepherding. So
this is the first and foremost thing. So I think a lot of people think, what do elders do? Well, they have meetings and they make decisions. The primary thing that the Bible is referring to that an elder does is that they are shepherds. The word means to guide or to help. It's where the word pastor comes from, poimen. And if you're reading in the language, it's all the same word. We just in English sometimes use the word pastor and sometimes the word shepherd. So in my office, there are multiple things that remind me that that's my primary responsibility, that I'm a shepherd. And here's one of the pictures. I found this in an antique store a long time ago. This speaks to the nature. There's relationship here. You see the sheep are looking to the shepherd for something. You also see the burden on the shepherd. Mm-hmm. This is a lot of weight here. But here's the difference. I also remind myself I'm actually one of these. I'm a sheep.
Right. That's right. That's good.
Who is a shepherd. So 1 Peter says, "So I exhort the elders among you as a fellow elder and witness of the sufferings of Christ, as well as a partaker in the glory that is to be revealed." Now notice there's the word elder in verse 1, and then in verse 2 it says, "Shepherd the flock of God that is among you." So you have this word elder, pastor, both are here. It literally could say pastor, the flock of God that is among you. And it goes on to explain how you do that, which has to do your relationship with people. And then it says being examples to the flock. So that's the main thing. And some people, that's an abstract thought. They've struggled with it. What is that?
Yeah. Well, and often I think we see an elder or a pastor, and we just think pastor, preacher. That's all they do.
Right.
They meet, make decisions, and they preach.
Right.
And that is a form of shepherding, but that's not the only way.
Right. It's not the only way. Shepherding is a very comprehensive thing, and you really are asking the question then. If you look at this, how do you know if someone is an elder? So if you're out there in the church, we encourage people to recommend to someone, hey, I think you ought to consider being an elder. Really what you're saying is you are an elder. Because you're looking at the characteristics of someone. We'll talk more about that in coming episodes, what the qualifications or characteristics are. But elders are shepherds, and they shepherd people spiritually. So here's the way I like to say it. Shepherds move toward people and people move toward shepherds. So if you go back to the picture, both things are happening.
Right.
Both things are taking place. So shepherds move toward people and people move toward shepherds.
Could you give an example of that?
Yeah,
in congregational life.
Yeah. So when I preached the very first series, when I'm going through some of this stuff, I would finish preaching the different sermons, and people would come up to me every Sunday and say, "You're talking about Dwight Johnson. You're talking about Dwight Johnson. You're talking about Dwight Johnson." Now, unfortunately, much of the modern congregation of Parkwood has no idea who Dwight Johnson is. Dwight is now in a nursing facility. He struggled greatly. Please pray for Dwight in the last few years. But Dwight exhibited being a shepherd. Dwight moved toward people, whether they were hurting, in need, or just in kindness, and people moved toward Dwight. He was a shepherd in every way you could think of.
That's good. Yeah. That's good. Well, so moving into the next umbrella, if you will. So you have a brother like Dwight who's already doing these things.
Yes. And
then so the next responsibility is teaching. But obviously, and we'll get to it, there's more than just elders who teach. So we've got this unique thing going on. So could you unpack a little bit for us as to the elder and its responsibility to teach?
Yeah. So just Dwight's worn out Bible. On Sunday, he would have every passage marked he was going to refer to. And it was always interesting. I said, Dwight, let me see your Bible. And he'd have all these little markers on there. Amen. As to what he's doing. So Titus 1:9 says he must hold firm to the trustworthy word as taught, so that he might be able to give instruction in sound doctrine and also to rebuke those who contradict it. So this is in the qualifications of an elder. So he's got to be able to give instruction. That means to teach it sound doctrinally, and to notice false doctrine. And when they do, to rebuke people who are contradicting that which is sound. In 1 Timothy 3:2, it just simply at the end of the characteristics or qualifications, it says have to be able to teach. Now, here's the difference. I've had this conversation with several men over the years. I can. That's not what it means. You're able to, and you're showing that ability through biblical knowledge, through your gifts, through the abilities that are being practiced among us as a church that we're seeing. It's not just upfront preaching. It's very interesting. The emphasis is not on preaching. It's teaching.
That's good.
That you're breaking apart these sound doctrine in the core of the word.
So how have we seen that how have we seen growth group maybe as a training ground to discern that?
It is the training ground. It is if you're going to say, well, where do we find elders at Parkwood? Well, the answer is in growth group. They're leading, they're shepherding, and they're teaching in the context of growth group, which leads to the third area of what elders do is they care for the church. In James, it says, if anyone is sick, let him call for the elders and let them pray over him. It's a very humbling moment of elders collectively coming together. By the way, this is something you're asking for. I think a lot of people get frustrated. So, well, the elders didn't notice to come. It says you call. This is a very specific moment of someone calling on being prayed for. We do this after church, in homes. We've done it in different places. 1 Timothy 3:5 says, for if someone does not know how to manage his own household, how will he care for God's church? So if you're not caring for your home, if you're not caring for your house, how can you care for the church of God in a meaningful way?
Yeah, well, and I think it would help because I think a lot of time in churches, you look at people who are running their household well and you say, there's an elder. Or you look at someone who's running their business well and you say, there's an elder.
Right.
But there's something unique. This is getting to the care of the church. And so you want to see those other things, but those, you don't want to just look at the person who's got the biggest family with the best behaved kids, so to speak. Is that right? Is that fair to say?
Right. So you got to see these other things, shepherding, teaching, coming together. What it's saying is what can't be true is the opposite.
Right.
If a man's not taking care of his home, then he can't take care of the church. The other thing, it ought to be normal that a man in a church is taking care of his home, right?
Right.
So this must be be true. So this is how we care for Parkwood, brothers and sisters, is through the plurality of pastors, elders, and it is through, back to the connection point, of growth groups. So what the pastors and elders have put together is this system throughout the church to where we have growth groups where people are being cared for and taught so that we have this comprehensive thing. So I just want to appeal to members of Parkwood, or if you're listening and you're a part of a larger church, and this phrase always concerns me that you really understand what you're saying. My pastor. Now, if you mean you're referring to the guy who is the primary leader of the church, and it's the church I go to, my pastor, who teaches them whatever. But if you mean that in a possessive term, that I need my pastor, there is no physical way I can help all the needs and care for the needs of Parkwood. I can't.
Sure.
It's just not humanly possible. That's why we have to have this plurality of elders who make sure that's happening. And even beyond that, you've got to have more people who are caring for others.
Right. Well, and so wouldn't that hold true? You mentioned the large church, but even the small church.
Absolutely.
Even if Parkwood was 150, one person still can't.
Absolutely. So people say that's why I go to a small church, is so I can have a personal relationship with the pastor. How many relationships can a pastor have a relationship really with 150 people and still preach?
Right.
And still rightly handle the truth and still lead, which is the last thing.
Yeah, right.
Elders got to be able to lead. Now, here again is where the mistake comes in of how we choose elders, is we look at, say, this guy leads this big company, or he's got this big job, so therefore he's an elder. That's why we go back to these other things an elder does, and looking next week clearly at the qualifications of an elder. Just because a man's a leader in his professional life does not mean he's going to be a leader in congregational life.
Yeah. So maybe this is wrong, so feel free to correct me here.
Okay.
You think some churches will say, hey, this guy is super godly. He exhibits godliness in this way, and this way, and this way. Yeah. And he's a pretty gifted teacher. So let's make him an elder and let him lead. But if he's not a leader, right, then maybe he shouldn't be an elder. Is that fair?
I think it happens.
Yeah.
I think it happens. So, but there is a leadership responsibility with elders. There are meetings, and they're long, and they are difficult, and they are complex, and there are things that have to be carried out of that meeting. Everything's not solved. In other words, elders don't get together and then tell me what I need to go do for the next 2 weeks, and then we get together. We share the work, and that's why Hebrews says, "Remember your leaders."
Yeah.
Those who spoke the word of God to you, consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. So these men are worthy of imitation. They're teachers of the word, but they're leaders. They're people that you look to. 1 Timothy 5:17, let the elders who rule well. Now, I kind of push back. In English now, rule is a bad word. Nobody wants to be ruled. But it means a managing, leading responsibility. So these people be considered double honor, especially those who labor in preaching and teaching. It means some people are paid. So that's why we have salaried elders and we have non-salaried elders. So we got to have shared leadership, elders. Nobody can do this on their own. It's got to be biblical. They got to be iron sharpening an iron, because sometimes the challenge is to depart and do it an easier way or a wrong way, and it's accountable. So we're leaders. We are accountable to each other. We are accountable to the congregation, but ultimately we are accountable to the Lord. Hebrews 13:17, obey your leaders and submit to them, for they are keeping watch over your souls as those who will give an account to God. They're going to give an account to God. And then he goes on to how this is supposed to be, with joy. You let them do this with joy and not groaning. So if you're always in the leader's ear, that's not giving joy. Now, am I saying don't express if something's wrong, bothering you, think it's unbiblical? Am I saying that? You work with me every day. Is that how I function?
I would say no, sir.
No, I am regularly listening to, responding to the questions that people have. If you have questions, you need to ask.
Right.
You need to ask. If you have concerns, you need to follow through with them. But at the same time, there needs to be a level of, God's given us these leaders, and we need to move forward. And I'm not the leader. I have to remind myself of that regularly. I'm a part of a plurality. God's given these leaders, and we work together.
Is it fair to say that this verse is probably one of the most difficult for a member, but also one of the most sobering for an elder?
Yes. This is the most difficult verse on both sides. It's obey and submit to leaders. Leaders are going to give an account because they keep watch over your souls. And this is not going to be thwarted. I mean, God's going to make sure this happens. And I believe this is one of the reasons a lot of churches are struggling, because they just refuse all the way around to do this. Leading, though, requires something very, very specific. There's a book that had a heavy impact on me right after I became the lead pastor here. It's called They Smell Like Sheep. The illustration, it just carries the weight of the book. You don't have to read the whole thing to get it. That means that a shepherd is interacting with sheep, and he recognizes he's a sheep himself. So there's another picture I got. So this came from Israel, by the way. We'll be talking about the wilderness here soon, and Luke, this is out in the wilderness. And you see this shepherd who's leading the sheep. He's not way out in front of them. He is at the front of the flock, if you will, and they're following. There's a lot of things this picture speaks to me. Where it's at. Where's the grass?
Yeah, maybe beyond the mountains.
I don't know. What's the pressure of this guy's God on him? But they trust him because he's led them there before. There's no house in the distance. There's no farm. This is who we are in the world that we live in, and God's designed it this way, that He's given us spiritual leaders, and they're not just paid people. Here's one of the things people forget about the leadership of elders. Every pastor is an interim pastor. Not going to be there forever. But God gives continuity in the life of His church through these non-salaried elders, these people who are there throughout the periods of time. Now, I've been here a long time. I've kind of become those people. But it's the consistency in the life of the church, and it's crucial. And what's crucial, Jacob, is that the right people do that. The right people become the elders. The right people are a part of that responsibility. Because you get the wrong people, and everything goes the wrong way for the church, not just among the elders. So that's where we need to go next time, right?
That's right. So there's more to come, but you've got a book that you're going to recommend. Is that right?
Yeah. So if you're like new to this, or you've listened the last couple of times, it's a simple book. 9 Marks have put together these books. I guess Crossway's picked it up now. Church Elders, How to Shepherd God's People. So this is written primarily at the elder, but it's also for the church to understand what is it that an elder is doing. It is extremely helpful and a simple read. And we'll go deeper in talking about how do you decide who becomes one? How do you choose these guys? Next time. This has been an episode of Distinct People, Distinct Time, a ministry of Parkwood Baptist Church, where we exist to glorify God by laboring together for the growth of all believers while going with the gospel to all peoples. You can learn more about Parkwood by going to parkwoodonline.org, and you can find resources like this one from the church by going to parkwoodresources.org.